Hello, everybody. Welcome to this evening's candidate forum for the North Mankato Mayor and City Council candidates. The League of Women Voters and the South Central Student Senate are proud to offer this opportunity for you to hear directly from our candidates. My name is Rachel Arnold. I am currently the Student Senate President of this campus. Allow me to take a moment to inform everybody to silence your phones. Just put them on silent, vibrate, so that they're not disruptive while we're doing the forum. It is going to be live, so just make sure your phones are silent and not being disruptive. And I would like to introduce you to our experienced moderator, Linda Heine. Linda is a longtime member of the New Ulm League of Women Voters and serves as their voter services and services their chairperson.
Good evening, and thank you everyone for coming. Normally, a member of our local league the league sponsoring a forum would be providing the moderator for the event. However, one of the members of the St. Peter League is a candidate in one of the races tonight. So to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, I'm sure you all know that the league strives to present a nonpartisan and fair presentation of information, particularly with regard to candidate forums. So to avoid any appearance of conflict, the league in St. Peter has asked me to moderate this evening's event. And similarly, in New Ulm, we have two races where we have members who are involved in. So we are grateful to have the help from St. Peter on our forums over there this year. The league is a local, state, and national nonpartisan grassroots 501c3 organization that promotes the active, informed involvement of the public in the voting process. The league neither supports nor opposes political parties or individual candidates. Shortly, we will hear from candidates for North Mankato City Council and the office of mayor. There are 7 candidates for City Council whose names will appear on the ballot. From these, only 2 will be elected. We have 2 candidates this year for mayor. Tonight, we will present questions to the candidates that address issues relevant to the upcoming election. Questions have been submitted online by the public and also formulated by League of Women Voters St. Peter and co-sponsor SCC Student Senate. All questions become the property of the League of Women Voters. We invite those present here tonight to submit additional questions if you choose. Those need to be submitted in writing, and there are 3x5 cards available and pens for you to write out your questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand or indicate to one of the ushers, and your question will be collected. We are not able to ask questions that are boy, this isn't going to go well. That are illegible, of a hostile nature, those that are personal and not relevant to the elective office, or those that are gratuitous, friendly, or asked for the purpose of making a statement rather than for eliciting information from the candidates. We have questions being screened tonight by Carolyn Dobler. Oh my goodness, I asked everybody how to say their name and I forgot to ask Karen. Dobler, okay. St. Peter, resident of St. Peter and League of Women Voters member, and Student Senate President Rachel Arnold. We just met Rachel. You're not Rachel. Our thanks go to the student senators who are assisting with tonight's forum. Great job, Rachel, in introducing the event tonight. As moderator, the final decision as to any particular question that is asked is mine, and I might combine questions if they are similar in nature. We already do have 9 questions that were prepared, so I'm sure we will fill our time tonight. The candidates will each have 1 minute to make opening statements and 1 minute to respond to each questions. We have volunteer timers, Bess Saucy, and another person I didn't introduce myself to. Hi, what's your name? Beth Sandell. Both St. Peter League of Women Voters members, I believe, yes. Okay, they will raise a 15-second warning sign to the candidates during their presentation and a stop sign at the end of their presentation. And everybody in the audience will be able to see this sign so that you can tell. I'd like to introduce our candidates. For mayor, we have Mark Dean, and Lucy Lowry. The candidates for City Council in alphabetical order are Craig Amundson, Kenny DeWitt. Mr. DeWitt is not able to attend tonight. He had another commitment that was unavoidable. Stephanie Jaquette, Diane Norland, Sandra Oakes, and Chris Sherman. Also, Matt Peterson is a candidate. Mr. Peterson also is unable to attend. He had an event for one of his children that could not be rescheduled. We'll begin with our opening remarks, and I kind of briefly shared with the candidates that I have these randomized grids for the order that we'll present questions and offer them the opportunity to make their remarks. We're going to ask the same questions of the candidates for both races. We'll have the mayoral candidates answer together, and then we'll have all of the council candidates answer together. Hopefully that'll help you discern between the two races. We'll alternate whether we go with city council first or mayor first on each question. And then we'll change the order of answering for all of the candidates throughout. So if we start with the mayoral candidates for their opening remarks, we'll start with Mr. Dean.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on tonight's candidate forum. And thank you to South Central for hosting. And thank you to all of you for taking the time out to come. I ask for your vote tonight, respectfully. I have an 8-year record of experience, productive leadership. I have been a conservative fiscal steward. We have reduced the city's debt from $25.6 million to $15 million over the last 8 years, while reducing the city's property tax rate by 3% since 2014, and by still increasing our infrastructure, improving our infrastructure, and expanding our quality of life amenities. I have been a true policy leader, initiating the local option sales tax and the tobacco 21 policy. I've been a regional leader on representing North Mankato citizens on the Greater Mankato Growth Board, on the Highway 14 partnership, and I again ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with Lucy Lowry.
Hi. I'd also like to thank you all for being here and for caring about the future of North Mankato. I'm Lucy Lowry, and I want to be your next mayor because I love our community and because I believe in its future. To ensure our future, residents must be involved in making decisions, and we must have all the information, both the pros and the cons. North Mankato has lots of smart, creative people with lots of ideas on how to make the city better while making the best use of our tax dollars. As your mayor, I will ensure that everyone is welcome and encouraged to bring your views to the council, where you'll be listened to with an open mind in a respectful environment. None of us has all the answers, but together we can make North Mankato an even better place to live. Thank you.
We'll now have the city council candidates present their opening statements, and we're just going to go right down the line, starting with Mr. Amundson for the opening remarks.
Good evening. My name is Craig Amundson. I've been a resident of North Mankato all my life. I've seen some good things in this city. I've seen some bad things. And I've seen some tremendous growth in this city since the 60s. I remember there's nothing on top of the hill in North Mankato. Done a really good job on expanding and maintaining growth in this town. This is my second time running for the city council, and I hope to make a difference. Thank you.
Okay, now Ms. Jaquette.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Jaquette. I'd like to thank our hosts, the League of Women Voters, my fellow candidates, and all of you for coming out tonight. My husband John and I moved to North Mankato in 2011. We now have 3 young children, and we are so proud to be raising them in North Mankato. I'm running for city council because I believe that I have a unique and valuable approach and skill set, rooted in my professional experience as a clinical social worker. I've worked in the nonprofit, government, and private sectors. I believe I can make a positive and productive contribution on the city council, using my skills in communication, collaboration, mediation, creative problem solving, and policy analysis. After attending meetings for more than 2 years, I'm fully informed and prepared to serve the community. I want to bring an independent voice to the council and promote a welcoming and respectful atmosphere. I look forward to sharing some of my ideas and priorities tonight. Thank you.
Okay, and now Diane Norland.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thanks to the League of Women Voters. My name is Diane Norland, as she just said. I have been a leader, a follower, a teacher, and a student in this community for a long, yes, a way long time, and don't try to do any subtraction here. It's okay. I have worked with CADA, the school district, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, the House of Hope, and Sioux Trails Mental Health Center, as well as the City of North Mankato. My work with all of these organizations has demonstrated these two goals: helping folks build their assets and strengths to create a happy, healthy future, and number two, helping organizations such as this community build on their strengths and assets to be a town that people want to live and work in, a home. I have decided to run for council again to continue this work. The future isn't done yet, and I'm not either.
Okay, and now we'll hear from Sandy Oaks.
Hello again, like everyone else said, thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Most of you may or may not know me, but I moved here in 1992 to attend, at the time, Mankato State University. I've been a resident of Minnesota for 26 years. I'm very active in volunteerism. Actually, as a matter of fact, in 2016, I received the Visit Mankato Volunteer of the Year Award. But just to give you some brief history, I have a lot of history working with both city governments, Mankato and North Mankato. I've been on the North Mankato Branding Committee, the Civic Center Advisory Committee, and the Civic Center Task Force. I also want to let you know that I've been very involved with the cities. I've attended inter-city leadership visits. I've been on the Visit Mankato Board of Directors, not only as a member, but also working with the City Center Partnership. And finally, I am the president of Business on Belgrade, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, and thanks to the League of Women Voters, the candidates, and the audience here tonight. Again, my name is Chris Sherman. I've lived in North Mankato for over 20 years. I live here with my wife, Carla, and our 3 kids, one of which is a week old, so I'm a little tired, sorry. I look forward to some challenging questions, and I look forward to hearing the views of my fellow candidates. This is also my second time running. My platform kind of includes economic development and supporting the Tobacco 21 effort. I also would like a younger representation on the city council. The average age in North Mankato is 38 years old, and we don't have that type of representation, so I hope to be that representation here in North Mankato. Thanks.
Okay, so our first question will be directed to the city council, my random rotation grid says that Mr. Sherman gets to go first. After Mr. Sherman, we will have Diane Norland and then Craig Amundson, followed by Stephanie Jaquette and Sandra Oaks. So I will remind you of that order as we go. The first question is regarding immigration. What actions will you take to ensure that North Mankato is a welcoming city for all people, including diverse populations?
Sure, good question. First of all, I'd like to kind of reflect on what happened in North Mankato a few months ago with the signs and whatnot. That's something that's not a representation of our town, and we need to represent ourselves better. And in doing that, invite people of different cultures and different immigrations to come out and speak with us and speak to the council and invite them to round tables and ask them what can we do better, how can we serve you better as a council and as a city. So I think those are a few ideas. I think meeting with the council and meeting with our constituents and getting their feedback too is important, and just having everyone's feedback and trying to just determine how do we better represent ourselves.
Thank you. Ms. Norland.
I have long been a proponent of immigrants. My grandfather came from Germany back in the previous century. My husband has been working with the Mayo Health Center and health clinic systems, and many of his doctors are immigrants, and bless them. I would like to see us do, Chris, I think, said it very well. Talk to and work with the immigrants that we have, invite them to council, to come and chat with us, and to be sure if they are having some difficulties to report that, and to report that to us. So when that ugly sign went up, we immediately had a presentation at council from a person who was the opposite point of view, and we all supported that. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Amundsen's turn.
The sign that went up doesn't reflect everybody in this city. It's just a few. It's something that I feel they were expressing their views, but it should have never been up. The immigrants that come into this town are here for the jobs that we have that are open that we need to fill. I'm also, for myself, I'm for affordable housing in this town. It's very expensive to live in this town. There's not a whole lot of building in the North Mankato side, more on the Mankato side for the housing. I mean, it takes a lot, and also the minimum wage has got to come up. I don't believe that the city should get involved in the minimum wage, but I think it's something that they maybe need to look at, and also to maybe see if we can do something about it.
I think I'll repeat the question because just for the viewing audience to remember that we're talking about actions that you would take to ensure that North Mankato is a welcoming city for all people, including diverse populations. And Ms. Jaquette, followed by Ms. Oakes, would be next.
I'd also like to comment about the racist posters that went up around North Mankato. That was very upsetting, and I stand in solidarity with anyone who was impacted by those posters. You know, I really see this as both a public safety issue as well as a community development issue. When our neighbors have to think twice about going out for a jog in the evening or sending their child down the road to, to the playground for fear of being harassed or otherwise threatened, that is not acceptable in North Mankato. And I think most of us here in North Mankato are on board with that. You know, one thing I've proposed is looking at city-sponsored intra and inter-neighborhood gatherings. I think a big part of this is really just getting to know our neighbors, breaking down some of those barriers, putting names to faces. That's a great way, in my view, to not only increase the level of safety in our community, but also just promote solidarity and bonds within our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Ms. Oakes?
Thank you. I can't agree more with the rest of the candidates sitting up here, but I don't know if a lot of people know that we do have a nonprofit organization in town that actually helps provide assistance to the immigrants that come to live in our community. And I think it'd be a good opportunity for us as council members to have a sit-down meeting and talk with them to see what the needs are and what they're looking for in regards to affordable housing, whether it's translations, jobs, etc. Even if it's as simple as getting them beds, because a lot of them just come overseas without anything. So my recommendation would be to maybe have those more open conversations with people that actually deal with them currently, and then we can move forward with where we can go from there.
Okay, now turning to our mayoral candidates again, what actions would you take to ensure that North Mankato is a welcoming city for all people, including diverse populations? And Ms. Lowry would go first on this question.
Okay, well, You know, the signs that were in the parks, of course, were horrendous. But as I've been door knocking and talking with people in the community, that's not just a single issue. This is an issue with community members. It may not be said loudly, but it is an issue. I've been involved before in the Tapestry program, which is an opportunity for some immigrant folks to get together and meet with members of the community to learn more about the community and how it works. And for instance, that their children, if they come home from school and say, if you don't let me watch TV, I'm going to call the police on you, isn't real. I think we need to start small and build with programming. And a wise immigrant woman told me that you have to go to the people rather than asking the people to come to you. Unfortunately, in our city, there are many different forms. Oops, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Dean.
Thank you. To the issue of the signs, I want everyone to know that our police force was on that immediately and did their job to try and investigate that to the extent they were able to. North Mankato has long been supporters of the Greater Diversity Council, which does outreach into our schools and tries to teach children of all levels about the differences in people and how to work together. And North Mankato has been a partner with them since they were in their inception. Ms. Lowry mentioned the Tapestry project. That's an outreach project with the police force. And again, that's a way of trying to introduce members of the diversity area, new arrivals, to our community and how we can integrate with them and get them to meet with us. I have been and met with the Somali community for Eid on different occasions and have done outreach with their communities. Beyond that, we continue to do the Neighborhood Nights Out as another outreach to our communities to raise those issues. So, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our second question, and the mayoral candidates will answer first, and Mr. Dean will be first to respond. Regarding finance, what do you see as the city's spending priorities in the next 4 years, and what do you see as the appropriate use of any budget surplus?
We are currently in the process of doing our budgeting at this time. We have a fairly elaborate 5-year budgeting process for our CIP projects, and then we have our ongoing operations. We are also taking a 10-year look at our future needs and how we prioritize our spending. As I mentioned, we have been doing a significant amount of debt reduction over the last 8 years. We continue to try and reduce our property tax rates. Because we recognize that taxes are a problem for our citizens and we're trying to be wise with their dollars. We continue to do things to preserve and improve our infrastructure. And we are doing quality of life amenities like the Spring Lake Park pool this year, hopefully Benson Park shelter next year, all with the idea of trying to improve our quality of life amenities for workforce attraction as that becomes our national stage and our competition.
Thank you. Ms. Lowry?
Well, I think one of our budget priorities is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. It's only a matter of time before more sewer collapses occur and sinkholes appear in lower North Mankato's aging infrastructure. And some upper North Mankato streets are nearing 50 years of age as well. As mayor, I'll work proactively to encourage an aggressive schedule of rehabilitation before more problems occur. We have lots of other issues as well, affordable housing, transportation, increasing diversity of our population. If we had a surplus, I think it could be used to pay down some of our debt. I don't feel that paying interest is a good expenditure of my tax dollars. Thank you.
Next, we'll turn to the city council candidates, and the order of response will be first Ms. Oakes, then Chris Sherman, then Stephanie Jaquette, Craig Amundson, and Diane Norland.
Just like the mayor said, I agree with both of what the mayor candidates said. I totally agree with what they're saying. I own Spinner's Bar in Lower North Mankato, which is a very old building, and when they were talking infrastructure, I do believe wholeheartedly that that is the future, to spend some money. But I'm also a conservative in that way. But I would like to see, as we're expanding outward and as the downtown has aged, we spend a lot of that time. But as the quality of life issue comes to hand, we want to be one of those destinations for visitors as well as residents and new businesses. So I'd like to see some planning on how to recoup some of those students from MSU that are leaving to stay here, and how we can give them a good quality of life.
Thank you. Chris Sherman.
Sure. When we say infrastructure, I kind of have a different thought. I like infrastructure, but I guess I'm talking about a different type of infrastructure. Casual sports was a great, I guess, revenue generator for North Mankato. It brings families and kids and probably thousands of people to North Mankato every year. We don't have the infrastructure to support that. We don't have the hospitality. We don't have the retail. We don't have the lodging. So when those tournaments come to North Mankato, where do those people go when they want something to eat, or they want to fill up their gas tank, or want to stay in a hotel? Some might stay in North Mankato. Majority are going across the river to Mankato, and we're losing all that revenue. So I believe that's where our efforts should be focused. And I think any type of budget surplus should go to those efforts. Thanks.
Stephanie Jaquette.
Here's my approach to budgeting. Priorities should go for needs over wants. Things like infrastructure, public safety, street repairs, those come first. In my view, we should be planning and preparing for future needs and unexpected expenses. The June sewer line collapse was unfortunately a reminder that those things do occur. I favor good stewardship of tax dollars when it comes to considering what burden of debt is manageable for our community. I'm not always in favor of borrowing out to the maximum possible limit. Like Ms. Lowry mentioned, I just don't feel that's the best example of good stewardship of tax dollars. When we use taxpayer dollars to provide business and development incentives and subsidies, I'd like to see us vetting those out. There's significant potential for savings in that area. And also, I'd like to see more public input as we're ranking project priorities. The last thing I'll say is that while our local tax rate looks to remain flat for the upcoming year, most of us are actually going to be paying more in local taxes due to the increasing property valuation. So just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Amundson.
I think along with everybody that's here was the infrastructure, I think, is key to this city. As to say, a lot of the stuff is getting 40, 50 years old, and with the sewer collapse that we had, it's going to take some money to take and fix it. We have to take and be very good stewards of our money and make sure we're getting our bang for our buck. Any surplus that we should have, I think, should be basically put back into the city as far as using it for infrastructure, roads, expanding, and also maintaining them. Thank you.
Diane Norland.
Thank you. Yes to all. A lot of good ideas here. Yes, obviously, probably the major thing is keeping infrastructure up, building new, and renovating the old and fixing the problems. Part of that also is environmental issues, such as the erosion that is occurring along Lake Street. That has to do with a lot of different factors, but Mother Nature probably is the major driver of that. But yes, that has to be faced and dealt with. And I'm not worried about surplus when we have these kinds of issues popping up. Also, I think we can be very proud of our amenities, such as Caswell and Spring Lake Park, and now the new water park, and we can do more as we go along.
Thank you. We'll move on to our third question, and this time the City Council will answer first. We'll start with Diane Norland, then followed by Craig Amundson, Sandra Oaks, Chris Sherman, and then Stephanie Jaquette will be last. The question relates to housing. The housing vision for the city of North Mankato states, quality housing is available for all income and age ranges. What specific ideas do you have to make this vision possible, given the area's need to attract workers?
I would like to see, of course, more affordable housing built in this community. Now, here we have a dilemma, though, and that is developers make more money on higher priced projects. So we got a little dilemma that we have to work with there. But one of the things that we've done in community development is that we have various kinds of grants, low interest loans, and all of those. We have resources available for people for developers to develop those kinds of projects, and also for people in older homes that need work to get, we have something called the Northside Revival Grant Program that can be a very great help to refurbishing older homes and making those more attractive to buyers rather than turning them into rental properties.
Craig Amundson.
Affordable housing is kind of what I'm after. We're going to run into a labor shortage. You can start to see it already around this area. It's not serious yet, but to attract new workers into this town in order to fill the regular jobs that are out there. The want ads are getting longer. If we don't have people to fill those jobs, granted the wages go up to a certain degree, but then it also stresses the business out where they can't take and expand because they have to pay for the workers. They need to have affordable housing because of how much it's taking of their weekly income or monthly income or bi-weekly incomes in order to afford the housing. I think the cheapest thing that I've had for my son, who is trying to move out of the house, is 28, is $800. And that's on utilities on top of that for a person that's making $11 an hour with no benefits. So then it has to be more benefits for the people, and thank you.
Sandy Oaks is next.
I couldn't agree more with what's been said. I also have a 24-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and I can attest to the problems of them trying to find affordable housing in the North Mankato area. But I also like to look forward to retention of the Mankato State or Minnesota State University Mankato College students, graduates. We see a lot of them leaving town to go to the Twin Cities, and how can we retain them into our community to be viable citizens moving forward? So not only is affordable housing very important, but also looking at the rental density, quality rental density. I think not everybody can graduate college, have all these loans, don't have a credit, and then try to buy a home. So I think it's important that we also consider looking towards some other options in that avenue.
Thank you. Chris Sherman.
Affordable housing is a start. We have those houses going up behind the Northgate community. And that also kind of goes back to the immigration question, kind of helps with our immigration issue, just providing them with affordable housing. But it's not just affordable housing, it's just housing in general. In North Mankato, there's a housing shortage for anyone who wants a house. When I was buying a house in North Mankato just recently, we'd made our offer on our house within an hour of it going on the market because you couldn't get a house. There were six offers on it already. So, and even, I guess furthermore, we need affordable assisted living, not just housing. There's waiting lists, and assisted living is just, the costs are through the roof. So Birchwood's a good example. That's kind of a step in the right direction, but I think the more competition we get in assisted living, it kind of drives the prices down, and that's something I've experienced with my family and something I feel we need. Thanks.
Stephanie Jaquette.
Affordable housing is a crisis in North Mankato and the surrounding region. My professional experience really leads me to start with a collaborative approach. There are a number of local and regional affordable housing organizations that are fantastic resources for ideas and information moving forward as we conduct city planning. In the long term, I'd like to see us take a creative problem-solving approach to the affordable housing crisis, but in the short term, let's move forward with some tangible solutions to begin to ease the burden. A couple of things that I've proposed. Ms. Norland mentioned our housing grant program currently in existence. I'd like to see two changes. Number one, a fresh outreach strategy. And number two, I'd like to see us add income caps. Targeting these grants to people who need them to most will not only grow affordable housing opportunities, it will make that housing more sustainable for the folks already in it, and it will improve and revitalize neighborhoods for all of us. Again, that's just a small change, but at least it's a step in the right direction as we begin doing some out-of-the-box thinking and creative problem-solving moving forward. Thank you.
And now we will turn to our mayoral candidates to respond. Again, the question relates to the vision for North Mankato for quality housing for all. What specific ideas do you have to make this vision possible, given the area's need to attract workers? The first candidate to respond this time will be Lucy Lowry.
Thank you. I completely agree with what Ms. Jaquette said, but I don't believe we can build affordable housing. In an affordable housing area where the houses are $200,000, that's not affordable to me. When people are coming, as Ms. Oaks said, with college debt and maybe a lower paying job, that's just not going to work. I did hear this as one of the main issues when I was visiting homes in lower North Mankato, and the rentals are what we need to be looking at. But the issues with the rentals are property upkeep and on-street parking. Our rental ordinance requires sufficient off-street parking, so I'm not sure why this is a problem. Maybe it could be addressed by a new rental task force that would actually include renters, a task force that would dig in and actually solve the problem. Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
Affordable housing does continue to be a large problem. It's been mentioned, and I agree with all the comments that have been made. We have been working extensively in this issue. We have strategies like Ms. Norland mentioned of the Northside Revival Program. We have put in the rental density program to preserve the housing in lower North Mankato, which is our affordable housing, and we're trying to preserve and improve that as we go through that process. We have also worked with developers looking at ways to outreach to try and help and partner with our developers and the developer community, those that are doing grants, and some others that are trying to develop affordable housing in the area. And we have used tools like tax increment financing to help with housing, where we will provide some city funding if there is a certain number of the units that have income adjustments to make them more affordable for those that are on income restrictions.
Okay, I think everyone's answered the third question. I'm going to move on to another question. This will be answered first by the mayoral candidates. Mr. Dean would be first. Please comment on any policing issues that you would like to address. For example, police education, civil forfeitures, etc.
Most of you are aware that we have recently hired a brand new police chief. For the first time in 60 years, we outreached to and hired someone from outside of our force. So he's bringing a number of new ideas and new feedback for us. One of the things he's identified is our evidence procedures. So those are some of the things that we will be addressing soon. You know, we have a dedicated group of officers, but we need to continue to move forward. There are a lot of great things in North Mankato, but the bad guys read about the great things too. And so we have been lucky to date that we have avoided any issues, but we are preparing for being a larger community, a more successful community, and using modern policing to take care and protect us as we move forward. And so I look forward to Chief Gullickson's input on ways that we can continue to grow and support our police force in North Mankato.
Thank you. Lucy Lowry.
Well, we are fortunate here to have the police department that we have. We have one of the safest communities in Minnesota, and we should all be proud of that. I don't know if you look at the map every week in the Free Press. I do, and you see all of the dots in a neighboring community, which shall remain nameless, and not very many in North Mankato. I think the new police chief has some great ideas. The neighborhood policing, where the officers get to know the neighborhood children and everyone else show up at neighborhood block parties, get to know people so that they're not the scary person going by in the car. I know that in our neighborhood I see a lot of policing going on. I see the cars go by constantly. I've had cause to ask for some help several times recently and have been very happy with the response. And I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you. Now we'll ask the City Council to respond to the same question, first with Stephanie Jaquette, followed by Sandy Oakes, then Chris Sherman, Diane Norland, and finally Craig Amundson. Go ahead, Stephanie.
My understanding is that North Mankato has a community policing philosophy, and I am in favor of that. And as the mayoral candidates mentioned, I am also grateful that we live in an extremely safe community. I look at the Free Press as well on the community map, and it's really amazing that we have been able to maintain this level of safety in North Mankato. I mentioned earlier, I've been a proponent of looking at intra and inter neighborhood gatherings, city-sponsored. We do one a year that the mayor mentioned, but I think if we can incorporate several of those throughout the year, that would be a great opportunity for our local law enforcement to get out and about, actually in the community, to sort of reduce that fear factor that some people have, and getting to know the community. And then just in terms of budgeting, I am in favor of prioritizing costs related to public safety. Thank you.
Next, we will have Sandy Oakes.
I couldn't agree more with what Stephanie just said. We are, as everybody else has said, that we are very fortunate to have a wonderful police department here. As an owner of a restaurant and bar, I can't describe how grateful I am for the police department that we have here and how great they are to work with. If there's any issues, they are always available. I think moving forward with the education that our new police chief will have, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to learn. We've been very fortunate, as everyone said, that we haven't had any problems, but to prepare for the worst, I think, is probably one of the better opportunities that we have looking forward. But I really can't say anything more than I'm just grateful to live in a wonderful community with a great police department that really cares for each one of us as citizens.
Chris Sherman.
Yeah, I support the police 100%. I think they do a great job. One concern I may have, and this is to a specific issue, is I think maybe they may be understaffed. And again, this is to a specific issue. Maybe some of you have kids that go to Dakota Meadows and deal with that parking lot every morning or every afternoon. We have kids crossing, parents that need to get to work on time and are in a hurry. So they drop their kids off at Caswell or down at the church or something. And these kids are crossing Howard Drive. And I voiced my concern to the principal, and she said, she's spoken with the police and they didn't have anyone to spare for 20 minutes to kind of monitor the situation to make sure the kids are getting in their parents' cars safely. So maybe this goes back to our surplus question. If we do have a surplus, maybe it could be used to staff or beef up our force. Thank you.
Next would be Diane Norland.
I agree with everything that's been said. Yes, I am very pleased with Mr. Gullickson. I've spent some time talking with him. He has a lot of good ideas, and one of the things that just happened was cones with the cops. And so there's a lot of effort by the police force to get out into the community and visit and talk and get to know people. The previous police chief was very active in the Tapestry program. So we are encouraging Police Chief Gullickson to be involved in many of those kinds of things. The City of North Mankato has become part of a collaboration to present an opioid summit up at MSU tomorrow. You are all invited. It is free. And so we are a co-sponsor of that effort. Thank you.
And the last person to respond to this question is Craig Amundson.
North Mankato, as I say, everybody has saw the map in the Free Press. I think this is a very safe town. I think the police force does a wonderful job with the equipment and the people that are there. I have not met the new police chief, but I understand he's well qualified for it. I do like the response that they had down at North Mankato Fun Days. You see them out all over. I know years past we've had some issues down there. I live down there. They kept that very under control. They saw something was there. There wasn't one or two or three. There was 3 or 4 or 5 around any issues that came up at the park. Even patrolling around the area, around the park, just to make sure everybody had a fun and safe time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be presented to the council first. Regarding the environment, what do you see as North Mankato's environmental vulnerabilities, and what steps might you take to address them? First would be Craig Amundson, then Chris Sherman, Sandy Oaks, followed by Diane Norland, and Stephanie Jaquette would be last.
As far as environmental, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. North Mankato's environmental vulnerabilities. What do you see as North Mankato's environmental vulnerabilities, and what steps might you take to address them?
I think the only thing that I can see that is basically the erosion of the ravines and basically the runoff that's going in the Minnesota River. Minnesota River is one of the dirtiest rivers in all of the upper Midwest, just because of the sediment that goes into it. We got to learn how to control it, how to slow it down. If you notice, anytime we get really heavy rains, it maxes our systems out. And as you say, we had the collapse of the sewer just because the river comes up, which we can't control, but we can slow it down with the runoff that is going into the city, or from the city into the rivers. Holding ponds and maintaining our infrastructure. It's one of those things that I haven't given a lot of thought about, but I mean, it might be something to really look at in the near future. Thank you.
Chris Sherman.
Yes, the erosion is an issue. The sewer issue, which we had a great response to, but I think continues to be a little bit of an issue. The levee is a big one. That's working with Mankato and getting that repair up to standards. I think is a vulnerability, but I think it's a priority, or we're making it a priority. I would like to see just kind of overall environmental issues. We have our neighborhood cleanups or our spring cleanups. We used to have it spring and fall. I'd like to see us, if we do have any type of surplus, maybe bring the fall cleanup back as well. But I think as a whole, I think we do a good job in addressing those vulnerabilities.
Sandra Oaks.
Just like Chris said, I think we do a really good job. The first thing that I wrote down when you said environmental vulnerabilities, I did write erosion down. However, looking at the City Council's past experience and looking at what they've done to research it moving forward, I think they've done a great job in trying to take those issues to heart and really work towards making some good changes. I know part of the question was steps to address them, and until we really can fully understand the costs involved, we have to understand what's causing it. So I really don't have a lot of answers for how we can address the erosion problems, but all I can say is that I know that the council has done a great job so far reviewing that, and hopefully moving forward we can continue to address that issue.
Diane Norland.
Thank you. Again, yes, I agree. In my mind, environmental issues are the ravines, the erosion, collapsing of the various walls, also water quality, and then recycling and composting. So in terms of ravine runoff, again, we got Mother Nature we're fighting against with the extraordinary rains and storms we've been having. So I know that we are looking at what actually can we do to reduce the damage and reduce the runoff, fix up the ravines, rebuild. However, the engineers have to tell us what needs to be done. The next thing is water quality, and that is, no, we can't allow junk to flow into our storm sewer, because that might include pesticides, that might include junk off the roof, off the siding. That has to be stopped in our lawns.
Stephanie Jacquette.
We certainly have infrastructure issues in North Mankato that pose an environmental threat, as the June sewer line collapse unfortunately has shown us. 4.6 million gallons of raw sewage were dumped into the Minnesota River, into an oxbow behind Henniker, and into Spring Lake Park. I anticipate that's a likely topic at some point this evening, so I'll just move along. A few other environmental proposals that I have put forward throughout my campaign. One is to look at developing a seedling nursery in North Mankato. Seedlings are extremely cost effective, and that would be a great way to provide healthy grown trees well into the future for our community. I'd love for North Mankato to establish a resident-led parks board. Most surrounding communities have parks boards, including many that are much smaller than North Mankato. The time, talents, knowledge, experience of our community members are currently underutilized, and we have a lot to gain as a community from having a welcoming atmosphere for residents who are interested in putting their talents to work in North Mankato. Thank you.
Now we'll turn to the mayoral candidates to respond to what do you see as North Mankato's environmental vulnerabilities and steps you might take to address them. Let's see. Ms. Lowry would go first on this question.
Thank you. Once again, infrastructure. I think if you ask this question in lower North Mankato, all the folks with the rainwater in their basements would say infrastructure. The sewer line collapse, as Mr. Kett said, was, hopefully that issue will come up later so we can discuss that more, but we certainly don't want to see that again. I think, though, that we are also doing many things well in North Mankato, including the great recycling programs we have with the addition of the organic waste recycling. Energy use, I think, is an issue that we need to be concerned about. Recently, the city has entered into a solar farm subscription. I think we need to continue to research other forms of alternative energy because I don't think one size fits all across the city. Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
So erosion has been brought up a number of times, and the city is in the process of evaluating the ravines that we have to try and address those issues going forward. In Upper North, we have holding ponds and those things to try and control water control. Some of our older parts of Upper North don't have those available, and so as we go forward and we retrofit roads and do things, we're trying to do add rear drains to try and control storm runoff, those types of things. One of the other ones that no one's mentioned is the urban forest. We know deforestation is coming from the emerald ash borer and other tree diseases. So we are actively using our Parks Department to evaluate our forests and how we're going to manage that going forward and bringing in different varieties of trees to help with that. And so we continue to do that. We are in the solar garden, as was mentioned. We look at alternative energy sources, and as we look at redoing buildings, we'll be doing more of that. We continue to try and be LEED qualified and using LED lighting in our streetlights and those things going forward.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by the mayor candidates, and Mr. Dean would go first. Students here at South Central want you to know that they have difficulty finding good, affordable childcare. Would you please list ways that the city could encourage the development of more high-quality childcare centers?
Childcare is a national issue. It was discussed earlier tonight at the Regional Economic Development Alliance meeting that I was at. That is an issue that we are looking at from the region on how do we bring more affordable childcare in. One of the thoughts would be to, as we have developments come in with affordable housing, that we provide childcare within those developments to try and make that local community have that availability to it. We are also looking at working with existing providers. We work with the school district on how they're addressing childcare and how we can do outreach with them. We're working with the University of Minnesota where they have childcare education going on ways to do more childcare daycare providing. And we've looked at other ways to try and make it affordable to work with businesses that may be able to help us as part of their workforce attraction package. So those are items that we continue to work at.
Lucy Lowry.
I think this is a great opportunity for public input. I think we should get people together and talk about the child care issue, what sorts of child care they need, because that matters. Infant child care versus toddler versus school-age child care. I think it might be possible to offer some business incentives to either start up daycares or incentives to businesses, as Mr. Dean said, that may provide child care within their confines. It is a big issue, and it's an issue with the job market and transportation. It involves everything. With our immigrant population, many times they can't leave home to go to a job because they either don't have the transportation or they don't have the child care. So I think it's an important issue we need to address soon.
Okay, the city council candidates will answer the question regarding opportunities to develop more high-quality child care centers. Stephanie Jaquette first, followed by Diane Norland, then Craig Abensed, Sandy Oaks, and Chris Sherman. Stephanie Jaquette.
Well, I can speak to this issue personally. I have 2 children in their pre-K years, and when we looked at putting both of our children into childcare, we were looking at upwards of $1,500 a month. So this is an issue, and to some extent the city can play a role. The city of Mankato has supported those types of initiatives in their development. I think we could look at potentially providing some sort of incentive to attract that type of development. We certainly have provided business and development subsidies for a whole host of other types of development. So it makes sense that we would look at this as well, because it would be a community amenity that would attract talent and support a workforce in turn. The other thing I'll say is that a number of gubernatorial candidates have proposed making some grant funding available to localities. So I think we need to keep our eyes on that process, and if any of that funding becomes available, make use of those resources on behalf of our community members. Thank you.
Diane Norland.
Yes, child care, affordable, adequate child care is certainly an issue. So there are a couple of resources, and I'm going to copy Stephanie here a little bit. There are a number of resources available, and I think we should tap them and work them, frankly. In our Port Authority, as you know, we have grants and low-cost loans available. They certainly could be restructured or renamed, reworked to offer incentives. for a person or a business to set up, as Taylor Corp has done, a child care center or several child care centers. In addition, there are, as I said, I've done a lot of foundation work. There are a number of foundations around the state who are interested in working with communities to develop child care.
Thank you. Craig Amundson.
Child care is very expensive. It's basically comes down to anybody that's making minimum wage or slightly above it. It's housing, which everybody needs to have a roof over their head. Comes down to food, and if they have kids, it's child care. That eats up everything that they have. Basically, with the grants and that are around with the state, I think it's a regional problem rather than just a city problem. I don't think that we're going to solve it at the local level. I think it's going to be more at a state level where with grants and different foundations that will step forward in order to supply money to the city or to North Mankato to help bring child care into the system. Thank you.
Sandy Oaks.
I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Amundson. I obviously have 2 children that are now in their 20s, and this issue was an issue for me back 20-some years ago, or 15 years ago. It is a nationwide problem. I think that a city won't have the resources available to start working on such an issue, but maybe trying to think outside of the box of how we can utilize our colleges and how we can utilize some other opportunities for daycare in education, and how we can try to attract the workforce, but yet, I don't know, I'm really having a hard time with it because I've struggled with it and I don't think there's really an answer. But maybe there's some alternative ways, and agreeing with Lucy, maybe it would be a good public opportunity for us to have a conversation about.
Chris Sherman.
Affordability, availability, quality, child care, those are kind of the main issues. In-home, I think we need to be more stringent on who gets those licenses. We've had some issues kind of in the region where in-home daycare is becoming an issue with abuse and neglect. There are centers, we've got a shortage of childcare here in the region. We need to build more centers, maybe by giving tax incentives. Immigrants are also, suffering the same issues. I think some possible solutions would be to work with MSU and SEC to incentivize students to go into that field, because we also have a shortage of childcare workers. And possibly put a childcare center within South Central. MSU has one in Children's House. It works well, and they give priority to those people that are working for MSU. So those are some possible solutions. Thank you.
Okay, the next question will be directed first to the City Council, and Chris Sherman is first in the order of response, followed by Diane Norland, Stephanie Jaquette, Craig Amundson, and then Sandy Oaks.
Would you repeat the question?
I haven't said it yet. So yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. There's a lot to keep track of tonight. Okay. Including the question that I was going to ask. Okay, there it is.
Sorry, didn't mean to say
That's right. Well, okay. Communication. That was not in the script that we would have that discussion. What have you learned, either as an incumbent or as a candidate, about the importance of frequent, open, and transparent communications? And what steps would you take to improve timely communication with the public?
Can you repeat the question? Just kidding. As I'm a project manager, and communication is 90% of my job. And the main thing is the stakeholders don't want surprises. They don't like surprises. So as much as you can communicate as soon as you can communicate it is in the best interest of everyone involved. And that could be done through weekly newsletters, through weekly emails, encouraging people to come to city council meetings. I know that there are just a handful of people, and most of the time it's the same people coming to every city council meeting. Maybe go out and have city council meetings within the public instead of having it within the quarters. Kind of go out to the public instead of having them come to you. But just making sure there are no surprises. I think that is most important. People don't like surprises. They want to be in the know, especially when it's their tax dollars involved. Thank you.
Diane Norland is next.
Yes, this is what we do so far. We do have an online newsletter with every week, and we do have, of course, the quarterly printed newsletter. In addition, you can go on our website and leave messages. And I've got to say, and I think it's true of all council members, give me a call. Give me a call, send me an email. Lots of people do that. Now, here's one little problem with that. You know how many scam artists there are calling us nowadays. So what you do is you call me, you leave a message, and I will call you back. Because I just had another scam attempt yesterday. And come to council. You have an open forum to bring issues up. Come and talk.
Stephanie Jaquette.
Throughout most of 2017 and 2018, the incumbent city council members placed a ban on public input on public meetings. I think probably most of you are aware of that. It was pretty well covered in the media. The explanation offered at the time was that the public was to blame for not following a number of guidelines. But actual data does not support that explanation, and I spoke out against that ban at the time. I do not believe that it is ever a good solution to shut people out of the process. In my work, I have worked both with and within systems that threw up lots of barriers to citizen involvement. In my experience, it is almost always to the detriment of the people being served. Here's my approach. You invest your family in North Mankato. You invest your dollars in North Mankato, and you deserve to have a voice. And there are lots of tangible things we can do moving forward to make our processes more open and more welcoming to the public, and I hope to have the opportunity to talk more about those this evening.
Craig Amundson.
With the ban that the city put on in 17, I didn't agree with it either, but I guess what I look at is be open and be honest. I'm always been approachable. My job takes me out into the stores and talking to people every day. I mean, get the feedback from the greater rather than, and also the few, but then vote for the greater. I guess that's kind of what my platform is. Thank you.
Sandy Oaks.
Well, I like to be always available and honest, and if you ever want to find me, I'll be down at Spinner's Bar and Grill every day, except on Sundays. That's my day to recover. But to be honest, I think, moving forward, the City Council has opened up the forums again. So again, if anybody has any concerns, please attend those council meetings. But we haven't talked about the Coffee with the Council. I've attended a few of those, and they have very limited people that show up for that. But thinking outside the box a little bit is I know that a lot of us live in unique neighborhoods, and we all have either Facebook pages or gatherings in our own neighborhoods. And it would be a good idea if you have an issue or concern and you're meeting with your neighbors, invite a council member to come over and have a one-on-one conversation. Invite them into your neighborhood. I'm sure any one of us would love to go and meet your neighbors and learn a little bit more about what your needs are. So, thank you.
Next for the mayoral candidates, Ms. Lowry would be first on this question.
Okay, I want to sort of tag on to what Ms. Jaquette said. The elimination of public comment at council meetings was just a baffling decision for a council that's supposed to be representing the residents of North Mankato, and there still are some restrictions on speaking at council meetings. If you're not willing to listen to fewer than 5 people speaking for 3 minutes each at meetings, maybe this job isn't for you. The main excuse that was given for restricting comment was that several people came back over and over again to address the same topic. I've attended most of the council meetings in the last year and a half and have seen for myself that in reality, the council actually set up the scenario where this would happen by not addressing the residents' issues. As mayor, I would lead a council that will listen to everyone respectfully, and the remaining restrictions will be lifted. And I will assign staff and/or council members to work with each resident on a solution and report back to the council. Thank you.
Mr. Dion.
The issue of restrictions was, in fact, because we did have a number of people that were trying to dominate council meetings, and so we tried to make that a more equitable process for everyone that was involved. We have lots of outreach from the council. We have Coffee with the Council. We have had a number of citizen engagement events. We have our biannual newsletter written. We have our monthly water bill inserts. We have our weekly e-newsletter. We have started a KTV outreach program where we're publishing the events in North Mankato on a monthly basis. We continue to make ourselves available as council by phone, by email, in the grocery store, at church, wherever anybody would like to approach the council. So there are plenty of opportunities to meet with people. We are always willing to go out and meet with anyone that's having issues, and we try and address those issues as best we can. Sometimes the answer still happens to be no, and that's disappointing to some short-time people.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to the mayoral candidates, and again, it's Mr. Dion who would go first. What message would you most like to send to our state's legislators?
We continue to work with both our state and our federal legislators on a number of issues that are concerning to North Mankato. We are one of the fastest, most successful MSAs, metropolitan statistical areas in the state of Minnesota, and we have had great success with that. We are becoming more noticed at the state level because of those successes, and they are appreciative of the efforts that are going down, especially in the collaborative efforts between the cities of Mankato, North Mankato, and our regional partners through things like Greater Mankato Growth and the Regional Economic Development Alliance. It is those successes that are continuing to help us continue to grow. But we need to have state support. We are, as a member of the Highway 14 Partnership Board, we are thrilled that they are finally doing the stretch between Owatonna and Mankato, or Rochester, but we still need to get over to New Ulm. Those are all parts of the growing infrastructure that we need the support of the state on, and we continue to work with them on other funding strategies. We mentioned healthcare or childcare and housing.
Thank you. Ms. Lowry.
Well, I was also going to mention the Highway 14 partnership. I think we all need to continue to lobby at the legislature for that. We've come a long way, but it's taken a lot of years to get here. And I think that all of you need to be involved, and the council needs to encourage the public to be involved and write letters and go up and see legislators. Not only would we need to lobby for the Highway 14 partnership, but any other issues that come along. The daycare issue, I think, is a perfect example. I think library issues, of course, having been the librarian, we need to get up there and lobby for the regional library systems. That money filters down to our local libraries as well. Thank you.
The City Council candidates will respond to the question, what message would you most like to send to our state legislatures, with Sandy Oaks first, then Stephanie Jaquette, Chris Sherman, Diane Norland, and Craig Amundson.
I have been one to attend Greater Mankato Growth's Day at the Capitol for many years. And one of my biggest wow factors was when I went up and talked about the Mankato, North Mankato region. They say, where are you at again? No, we are not in southwestern Minnesota. We are in south central Minnesota, and we are a powerhouse down here. So I think Greater Mankato Growth has done an excellent job of communicating that we do exist, and letting them know that, you know, we are one of the fastest growing MSAs around, and they need to take heed to us. When it comes to funding, I mean, you see cities like St. Cloud, you see cities like Rochester, Duluth getting government grants, and I want to encourage every single one of you to reach out to your congressman or your senator and let them know, or not, your government officials, to say, hey, we need to make sure that we are heard because we do exist. So I think that it all comes down to communication.
Thank you. Stephanie Jacquette.
I think this is an example of one way that I can offer a unique perspective as a candidate. I am trained as a communicator. I am trained to collaborate, to build consensus, and I know how to work within and between government agencies. I understand the legislative process as well as public policy and how it affects real people. In terms of specific project areas, I think affordable housing, the Highway 14 project, childcare, as well as the levy are all issues that we're having to do some collaboration at the state level. Budgeting is another sort of intersection between the city and the state level, particularly in terms of planning ahead. We've been talking about planning for unexpected potential future needs, but depending on the gubernatorial race, we may be looking at changes or even a diminishment of our local government aid. And so that's not something we can necessarily count on. In the past, that has diminished, so we need to be planning and preparing for that as well.
Chris Sherman.
Thank you. I think before we send a message to our state legislatures, we need to prioritize what we want that message to be. Obviously, Highway 14, that project keeps getting put on hold over and over again. It's one of the most dangerous stretches of road in Minnesota. Child care, we need funding for that. Obviously, we talked about that already. We've got a shortage. It's somewhat of a crisis. Something that hasn't been talked about that I spoke about earlier is assisted living. I think that's also a crisis. Our baby boomers are getting older and older. We're having wait lists, and there aren't affordable assisted living facilities that are available to them. Education is another one. We have underpaid teachers and aging schools here in town. And then sales tax revenue. You know, when are we going? I believe that wasn't being released this past year. So just getting those priorities in line and then creating our message. Thanks.
Diane Norland.
Yes, working with our legislatures. You said it, communication. I have on more than one occasion called up Clark Johnson, talked to Nick Friends, been in contact with the Cathys. Some of you remember the Cathys. They're not in office now. But, call them up and chat with them and say, what do you think? Do you think you could help with this, or you think we could help with that? MnDOT comes through all the time with matching funds for our road work, some of our paths, a variety of things. So we need to continue to collaborate with them. The sales tax, we finally got through, so that gave us a bit more, some more resources to carry out the things we felt we wanted to do and needed to do.
Craig Amundson.
I think the thing that I tell the legislature is to get your work done on time. It seems like all the cities are right up to the edge of budgets being due at a certain time, and the state has not got their work done on time. They tend to wait till the last minute and rush everything through, and it's not really thought of how to fund the project or how it's going to affect people, and then they got to go back to the next legislative section and correct it. I still believe, the roads need to be improved here. Highway 14 project, continued all the way from Mankato to New Ulm, with the other project going on by Claremont. The other one is childcare. Bring that to light, see what the state can do to help us out in the region, rather than at a city level. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Okay, I think we still need to hear from the mayoral candidates. Did not respond yet? Did respond. Okay, I'm playing bingo over here, and you know what? That just tells me that I'm correct, that I think that we've probably asked as many questions as we should tonight. It's 8:20 already. Unfortunately, we have several really good questions that I was unable to get to. But at this time, we'll ask the candidates to go ahead with their closing remarks. Let's see, the council will go first with closing remarks, and the order will be Sandra Oaks, Stephanie Jaquette, Craig Amundson, Chris Sherman, and Diane Norland. Sandy.
Again, thank you for listening to me babble. I'm not an excellent speaker by any means, but I want every one of you to know that I am completely invested in this community. Not only am I a resident, I also own a business. So all my heart and soul is into this community, and my goal is to make this a great place, not only for my children, but my 3 grandchildren as well. I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting more of you when I go out in the streets. I got to see some of you at Business on Belgrade, the big Beer on Belgrade event. That was super successful this last weekend. I still want to look forward to building Belgrade Avenue as well as Commerce Drive. And I just want to leave you with the fact that I really would appreciate your vote, and I will do whatever I can to make this city a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Jaquette.
Thanks again to the League for providing this opportunity. Here's what I believe sets me apart as a candidate. I can contribute a unique approach and perspective drawn from my experience in communication, understanding of public policy, advocacy, mediation. I've attended City Council, Port Authority, Planning Commission, and other public meetings for 2 years, so I'm fully informed and prepared to serve on day one. I care about resident ideas and concerns. I launched my campaign in the spring to connect with as many residents as possible. I've knocked on about 2,000 doors. I've hosted public events in the parks. I've worked very hard to put my ideas forward and my priorities forward so that you know what I stand for. And I will contribute an independent voice on the council. I invite you to visit my Facebook page, and I'd love to hear from you with any questions or comments. My husband, I see, is standing out there ready to pass out my contact information, so I'd love to hear from you. And finally, I'm asking for your vote. I appreciate your consideration, and it would be my honor to serve as your council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Amundson.
I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for the forum, and as I say, it's the second time that I've run for City Council. I've been a lifelong member of this community. I think I can make a difference. I'm not the best in the public speaking, but I am good with people and talking to people and getting their ideas. And hopefully some of those ideas turn into something good for the city. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Sherman.
2 things that I'm passionate about are our city's economic development and our children's health. First, North Mankato has grown 15% since 2000. However, our economic infrastructure hasn't. As I said before, we leave our community for groceries, restaurants, retail. I think we can grow, but at the same time, keep our identity as a small community. The council has continued to say, let the market dictate. I agree with that. However, there's been some negative rhetoric. We've been down that road. We've learned our lesson in those things. We aren't the same community we were 10 years ago. The business from Waseca coming over, that was a step in the right direction. It brings us interest revenue, property tax revenue. It fills a building that's been empty for several years. It's a step in the right direction, but it's the wrong type of infrastructure in my opinion. That's one of the things I'm most passionate about. I would appreciate your vote in November, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Diane Norland.
We live in a time of great opportunity. I could just about do this, couldn't I? We live in a time of great opportunity and great challenge. The fact is, this ain't our grandparents' North Mankato. There are those who criticize our efforts, who are resistant to change, and who feel the only direction is to go backwards. I, on the other hand, believe that there is more to leadership than simply being negative. We need to be responsive, responsible, and curious. Respect, civility, and the ability to work with people, that's how I define leadership. And that's what I bring as a member of the City Council.
And now our mayoral candidates, with Lucy Lowry proceeding first.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here as well. I'm running for mayor because I have the skills for this job. Communication, budgeting, organization, collaboration, a sense of humor when things don't go exactly as expected. But more importantly, I have the heart. I genuinely want to encourage positive progress in North Mankato for a very good reason. My grandchildren live here. We've lived here for 30 years, and while North Mankato was a great place to raise our sons, I want it to be even better for Quinn, Afton, and Cora. We can all do this together by listening to one another and getting the most information we can before making a decision. I want to be your mayor, and I would love to have the opportunity to speak with you when we're finished here. As your mayor, I will listen, respect, and act. Please vote Lucy Lowry on November 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight. And again, thank you for all of your attendance tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for coming out tonight. It takes passion and courage and a willingness to serve to do this. So I welcome all of you, or thank all of you for those attributes and taking this chance to stand up and offer to represent the citizens of North Mankato on their efforts. I think the North Mankato Council has done a great job over the last 8 years that I have been involved. Our city is well positioned for the future and continues to grow in enormous ways. We will continue to capture that growth as we move forward and continue to encourage all types of infrastructure, to Mr. Sherman's point. But some of that is beyond our control, so we do continue to work at it. But with that said, I still have the passion and the willingness and the courage to stand up and stand for the decisions that have been made by our council over the last 8 years. And I, again, respectfully ask for your vote for the office of mayor. Thank you.
This concludes our forum. The League of Women Voters of St. Peter and the South Central College Student Senate, thank you for your participation, candidates. We thank the candidates and the audience for coming and the candidates for sharing their views and the audience for their interest. We extend our appreciation to the question screeners, timers, ushers, and especially the student senators for donating their time this evening. Thank you also to South Central College for allowing us to use this fine community asset. The forum has been recorded by Public Access KTV and will be aired in its entirety on Consolidated Communications Channel 507 and on Charter Channel 181. Thanks to the KTV crew for their service. If you need to register to vote or need more information on elections, you can find comprehensive information at www.minvotes.org. I read that wrong. www.minvotes.org. Pick up one of our bookmarks on the way out. The bookmarks contain the web address. Early voting in Minnesota has already started, and Election Day is November 6th. Please don't forget to vote. Let's thank our candidates.